We work hard as physicians to take care of the health and well-being of our patients. But when it comes to our money, do we have the same condition of care? Probably not. Let's change that together. Welcome to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast, where we'll fight and advocate for your financial literacy. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. Thanks for being here. Let's jump into the show. So, hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And today our guest is Dr. Robert Wolf. He's a board certified radiologist by training, and he's got an inspiring comeback story. He's written a book detailing his family's experiences during the Holocaust and how they've escaped. It's really interesting. And he's here to talk to the audience, a lot of the physicians, about his journey. And I'm happy to hear his journey. So, we have around 17 minutes. So please, kind of detail what you told me. And, I'm really in what the book is about.
Well, thanks for having me, Dr. Liu. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And thank you for your time and the invitation. Much appreciated. Yeah, I wrote a book called Not a Real Enemy, The True Story of a Hungarian Jewish Man's Fight for Freedom. I have a co-author, Janice Harper, who is an amazing author. She's based out of Michigan, too, like I am. I was born in Detroit and raised in suburban Detroit. My dad was a doctor. He was a role model to me. He delivered 10,000 babies in the Detroit area and did surgeries and loved his work. And I guess that's the punchline to the whole thing. So going backwards, the book, Not a Real Enemy, they wrote their autobiography in the 1970s. They went from pencil and paper to a typewriter, to a computer, to a disc. And I didn't really pick it up until 2018, a couple of years after my mom passed away in 2016. My dad passed in 1997, unfortunately, many years ago already. The story is an adventure. It's a biography about my dad and my mom in the second half of the book. It's a book about the history of Hungary, ranging from World War I all the way to the end of the Hungarian Revolution in 1956. The Jews had to suffer through many of those years, not only under Nazi Hungary, but also under communist Hungary. My dad was a 4-time escape artist. When I first read the manuscript many years ago, I didn't think much of the book and I didn't remember most of it, but I did remember his first escape, very harrowing, from a forced labor camp out in the middle of nowhere in the cold foothills of the Caspian Mountains. And then 3 other escapes. Another one from they were in the dog pound in Budapest, and they escaped from there right in front of Nazi headquarters. Another amazing story. Then he escaped twice under communist Hungary as well. And in between, cloak and dagger stories, twists and turns, arguing with armed Russian soldiers, hiding places you wouldn't think, friends that you wouldn't expect to be friends, and the people thought you were enemies were your friends, and the people thought you would be your friends turned out to be your enemies. All kinds of crazy things that you couldn't possibly make all this stuff up. And Dad and Mom recorded his memoirs, his whole life. So it's more than just a memoir; it's his autobiography back in the 70s. And they wrote the stories as though they had happened the previous day. They were very clear in their mind. They were into culture, not just Holocaust education, which they were, but museums and arts and theater, operas, travel, education. They were very smart, very well-rounded people, and they made sure in America while they were here and finally got established in the 70s that the Holocaust shouldn't happen again. And they kept educating their friends and family. They met all kinds of Eastern European friends, all kinds of Jewish and Christian friends. But they had friends all over the world, too. They were Hindu and African American and from continental Africa and Asian and on and on and on. And even in my dad's autobiography, we didn't include it in the book, he talks about going to Hong Kong and meeting people that had emigrated from China to Hong Kong, and they compared their experiences under the communist regime. So very, very open-minded, very intelligent people. And once I read my dad's story, which was in 2018, I couldn't believe all these amazing miracles. And so I couldn't leave it on a piece of paper. I couldn't leave it on a computer or a disk. And I thought I'd share this book with the world. And here we are.
Yeah, and really, I encourage the audience to take a look at it because it's really, Dr. Wolf, Robert, if I can call you, has really put in a lot of time and effort and won 4 awards, and it's been showcased at a lot of Holocaust museums. And so kind of I love extrapolating basically because they say history doesn't it rhymes. So, we're living in the midst of it sounds like, kind of like the World War I, World War II, kind of the 60s, the Vietnam when there was so much turmoil. And I look at the especially an important year, election year here, and with everything going on, you have two, in my opinion, very lackluster candidates, and you have one, and then kind of if one wins, it's kind of reminds me, it kind of brings back eerie reminders of what can happen to individuals when somebody comes to power. So what do you like? My question for you is in terms of just what everything is going on. Do you see, for example, our society, is it a better candidate, or is it kind of, all this turmoil and leadership? I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, I'm not very political. I'm not crazy about the candidates. I'd like to see younger candidates, but not like Trudeau in Canada, because I don't think he's doing very much to control his population as well. I understand that there are two women candidates in Mexico, and we'll see how that. They're also our friends. We don't talk about Mexico much. I hope they control the border. I think immigration control is a big issue. My parents were immigrants. I agree, but they contributed so much to society. They were legit. They went through the ropes. They learned English, and my dad was an OBGYN, so they really went through the route. So immigration control is a big issue. Of course, defense. I think if we don't have a good defense in our country, we've got nothing. And no matter who the president is, I'm not big into scapegoating. I'm more into accountability. My dad, as much as anybody, would call out Jewish malfeasance as much as anybody. A person is a person. It doesn't. I mean, whoever's in charge, it's not just one person, first of all. But I do need my police to protect me, and we need our military to protect us. If we don't have that, then you have what my parents and ultimately my grandparents, my late grandparents that I never met because they were murdered at Auschwitz. So that's we're not there. We're not there. But what I'm trying to do, whether it threatens me directly or not, is to try to prevent that from happening by educating people about the Holocaust. And believe me, I'm telling everybody about the book. I've written my local congressman. I've sent a book to Steven Spielberg. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do it anymore. And I know that's a long shot. And other people like Adrian Brody, who did The Pianist. I've done 20 TV and radio interviews. This is almost my 40th podcast, 31 or so book presentations. Children, adults, Holocaust Museum book signings, and I've been invited back to the one in DC already, which is really, really humbling, a real honor. And the great people that go through there, they ask the questions, they buy the books, they've got the kids, they're curious, they're interesting, and it makes me feel hope that there's hope for this country, there's hope for our children. And to me, educating people about the Holocaust is now my charge, but ultimately I want it in the classroom. That book needs to be sent, and colleges are appropriate. I mean, especially these colleges that are protesting. And if they want me to go talk about the book at Columbia, we've got a rip-roaring, well-received talk about the book and the emotions it brings up and the resonance and how it compares with what's going on today. It's right there. I mean, this book was written by my parents that I converted into a biography. Like, A, they knew I was going to do this. And don't you hate it when your parents are right? And B, the timing of it is just so unreal. So, and I never would have imagined we'd be going through what my mom and dad had to go through after World War I, first of all, and then the rise of antisemitism, the Great Depression, and everything else, and ultimately 2 wars and pestilence. And it's very comparable. We've got Russia involved. That's comparable to the book because the communists were no better to the Jews than the Nazis were, short of corralling them into trains and ghettos. They were repressive. And so it goes on. And war, we never learn. That's the other thing. As Americans, people in the free world, we just never learn. We take things for granted. If it doesn't affect you, you're not apt to act out on it. But fortunately, I have more people aligned with me than misaligned. And that's very heartwarming, too, that people they appreciate what we're trying to do.
Forget the burdens of tenants and toilets. Equity Multiple simplifies your investment journey, letting you invest passively in vetted, professionally managed commercial real estate. Only 5% of reviewed investments reach Equity Multiple's platform, with our asset management working on each from funding through exit to maximize your returns. Whether you're on the couch, in your exec chair, or the backseat of a ride share, Equity Multiple brings cash flowing real estate investments straight to your fingertips. All investments involve risk. Visit equitymultiple.com to learn more. Which brings us to my follow-up question is, because your book is talking about the story of resilience, and I lived here all my life, so I see the United States going downhill. It's not getting better, but we talked about being spoiled and taking things for granted. And so my question for you is, for example, if you had your family in your situation, war and famine, either Russia, Ukraine, or Israel, Palestine, all these, like, would they be dying to come into our country now, and or is kind of like the United States just lost its dominance and just kind of trying to grasping on and holding on?
Well, hope for this country. I mean, like I said, when I do these talks and people that show up, the idea is for those people to read the book, write a review, and then tell 10 friends, better yet, tell 100 friends, and invite me to another book talk. And I do think there's hope. Our country has mixed, it's mixed. I mean, it's still the best country in the world. I've got that Warren Buffett optimism. I just watched his, the whole program, or not all of it, but very inspiring. But he's an idealist. I mean, I'd like to be like that too. I'm cautiously optimistic in general. I mean, if you had to say whether I was political, I'm a little right of center, I guess. I'm very conservative. And in addition to what I said earlier, fiscal responsibility is a big issue in this country. I think our national debt it's spiraled way out of control. We should have paid it down when we had the chance in the 90s under Clinton. And that was a good regime. Not necessarily I was crazy about Clinton, but he was okay. But with the Republican Congress and Clinton, but also the economy was booming, and we weren't in the middle of wars, and there wasn't fighting in the streets. There was no COVID. So whoever, if you're president or if you're in charge and bad times happen, like natural disasters or wars, you're just out of luck. I mean, and you're going to be the scapegoat. So, but as a country as a whole, I would live in Israel. And if another irony is if the United States had rescued Hungary rather than Russia, we wouldn't be here. I'd probably be a doctor in Hungary, hopefully, and raised there, and they never would have come to the United States. My mom's parents, my mom's mother and stepfather moved to Israel. They left before the war, and they wanted my parents to move to Israel when they escaped Hungary, my dad's fourth escape. Yeah. And they didn't want to do it because the Sinai War was going on at the same time. And mom and dad said, 2 wars is enough. We're not going to live through another war. So even though that war was shortened. The Ukraine war, I call the Hungarian Revolution on steroids. I wish it would end already. The Hungarian Revolution was only 2.5 weeks, but 3,000 people died in that war. Not a lot of people know about it, but countless refugees and injuries. And mom and dad were frontliners during that war. And then they said, enough is enough. We're getting out of here. So they did. Another harrowing escape. So I'm Hungary. I feel badly for Hungary, and I feel badly for Ukraine, because these poor people can never get out of this vortex of hate and malfeasance, and they can't just live their lives as free people. Even though Hungary is technically democratic, people accuse Orban of being Putin's puppet. He seems like he would do a land for people deal in a heartbeat. And that's what happened to the Polish people in Hungary, the Hungarians in Hungary later on, and on and on. And the geography changed so much in Europe in the last 100, 200 years. You need a program to keep up with it. It's like when they fast forward global warming and the melting of the ice caps. It's the same kind of thing. The territory is moving around so much. And the poor Jews from end of World War I to the even now, I imagine, they always thought whoever was in charge, whether it was Horthy, the Red Terror, the White Terror, another program you needed, then the rise of fascism, then the communists, no matter who the leader was, the Jews felt that who was going to hate me the least? Who do I have to worry about the least? Or why do I have to worry about this person? I'm not quite there because I think most people are reasonable. There's a semblance of normalcy. Most people care about their career and their families and work and leisure. I think, but it's those few detractors. I always say there's always one guy that ruins it for everybody. Hitler and Osama bin Laden and Pol Pot, and we go on Mussolini and Castro. There's always one guy that just ruins it for everybody. So here we go again. Whoever else, I couldn't even name a Hamas leader, and believe me, I don't want to. I don't even want to know their names. And you know what I'm talking about. Oh, and also 9/11. Let's talk about 9/11 for a minute. 9/11 was a fight. And that was the last time we were cohesive as Americans. Before that, it was maybe World War II. I agree with what you said about Vietnam. But somebody just pointed out recently that Vietnam was a protest against our old boys getting killed overseas for a war that we poorly understood. I kind of understood it while I was a child then, but because we were fighting communism, and same with Korea and on and on. But this is different. I mean, people aren't as aligned as they were in the United States as they were before. And in 9/11, the attacks were by terrorists, and they were American targets. They weren't Jewish targets or Christian or Asian or Muslim. All kinds of people died in that attack. And not only that, the collateral damage that we don't talk about, the people that get chronic illness, the costs to rebuild, the costs of transportation and defense, and the cost of war itself. I mean, and the inconvenience of it all because of one guy or 10 guys, whatever you want to call it. So, but that was the last time America seemed to be cohesive. We were all on the same page. But even then, some Muslims were scapegoats from that. And I think that's completely ignorant. I don't think that's an appropriate use of history. And then the Asian population after the COVID epidemic. And none of that was, and people say, oh, it's Trump, it's Trump. It's not Trump. People need to be accountable for their own actions. And I can't say that enough. I've learned that from my parents who, one of the messages in the book is integrity, and it's on every page, and that's in my talk. Hope, humiliation, determination, resilience, just the way to bounce, just that need for survival, risk tolerance. And then everybody that reads this book, besides saying that it should be a movie, which from their mouths to God's ears, maybe someday, because there's so much action in it and just so many miracles. But I just can't imagine how you or I or any typical American could survive that kind of thing again and again and again. Very, 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 very tough circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly know what you mean. Just being a minority, just being a non-white person, and yeah. So, and I really love your book is kind of a microcosm of the stories throughout history, and it's very personal, very inspirational, around the whole era of the Holocaust, and it really just brings up memories of what's going on now, and just our world in turmoil and just chaos. And so I encourage the audience to check it out. It's on Amazon. It's got 4 awards. And how can people find you and follow you and reach out to you?
Well, here's the so if you Google Not a Real Enemy, the true story of a Hungarian Jewish man's fight for freedom, or if you Google me, Robert J. Wolf MD, I do have a website that's Robert J. Wolf MD. You can email me at robert@robertjwolfmd.com if you'd like. But the book is available on Amazon through Amsterdam Publishers. They did a fine job. Appreciated them picking up the book for me. Also Barnes & Noble in stores and online. Walmart. It's also at the Tufts University. I'm proud to say my undergrad alma mater. It's on the Tufts University bookstore and library. Had a nice review from Saul Gittleman, Professor Emeritus, who was the provost at Tufts, and also the United States Holocaust Museum in DC and the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center, where we did a nice program there last fall. So the book's out there. You Google Robert J. Wolf, Google Not a Real Enemy. Check out the website. I have a YouTube channel, Robert J. Wolf, loaded with content, like 30 videos. The website's loaded if you want to read up more about the Hungarian Revolution and the Jews during the Holocaust in Hungary, and many, many videos and blogs and all kinds of stuff. I'm very busy with this, but it's heartfelt. My legacy to my parents. 10% of my author proceeds, by the way, are going to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. That's ongoing and permanent. It's in my trust. The kids support it, the grandkids. 2 of them have already been to the Holocaust Museum, sent me pictures of them holding the book. That kind of thing makes my month. So hopefully my grandkids who are Christian will continue to help spread this message, and hopefully this nonsense and malfeasance soon. And believe me, I'll do talks at every one of those places. Put me in a tank, we'll drive right through the protesters, not to kill them, just so for my protection. Get me into a building, and we'll do a talk, and to people that will listen, and hopefully it'll change people's minds about how life is, because it certainly did mine and many people that I know, and that's why I'm doing this.
Just talking to you just kind of really makes me want November to come so soon, because feels like it's that last ringer, like that last grasp, and then once we get to November, it's gonna be, hopefully everything's gonna be okay. But it's just I really enjoyed talking with you. Thanks so much for coming on.
I'm excited that you made it for another episode. You are truly the best. If you've been following the show for a while,
You know that my passion is to bring you the education you need to find your path to financial freedom. Please come back week after week for new content, new resources, and great guests. Until then, if you haven't already, please be sure to check out the website, www.drchrislewmdphd.com for more support. I'll see you next week.